If you're wondering what kind of situation a child could be in that could cause them to have an adverse childhood experience, just take a listen.
Mankey and his girlfriend, Katie Koch, are charged with felonies, including chronic child neglect.
And police say last week, Cox's two children broke through a window and were found outside, naked and dirty.
Because we saw a bunch of red marks on them, and they had no clothes, totally terrified.
What happens to the children?
The criminal complaint states the children have never been to school. They can't read or write. They haven't been to a medical appointment in at least 3 years and had not been bathed in a week.
So, what is ACEs? Okay. ACEs is a potentially traumatic event that can occur with children between the ages of 0 and 17. ACEs is adverse childhood experiences. What are these traumatic events, right? So you have children who experience violence in their home, or violence on the street. They experience abuse themselves along with the violence that they see. They experience neglect that can be by way of not being cleaned properly, not being fed, not having your medical needs tended to. There are so many things that can fall under neglect. There is also sexual abuse, witnessing violence in your home in the community, and having a family member attempt or die by suicide. So just this list, there's so many things that can fall under those traumatic events. Included a news story here about drug addicts being coddled as their kids are neglected. I wanted to say, what do those children have to hold on to? What hope does this child have here in this car with two drug addict parents? It would really take someone from the outside seeing this and stepping in and ringing the alarms for the child. People in the community not just sitting by and allowing, just ignoring these type of things. I wouldn't say allowing, but I would say that I always push for people to be able to have their freedom, but there's no freedom in harming a young soul. There's no freedom in it. This war that's taking place, the wars that have taken place, these children growing up, not understanding the conflict, how do they fare in life when the bombs stop dropping, even while they are dropping? What is the traumatic recovery plan for them? Is there anything that we can do beforehand to prevent these? Is there anything that we can do beforehand to intervene sooner and not have it be so many years of a child's life? I'm going to stop right here. I want to play you something.
Trauma-informed care specialist Tim Grove says after working 3 decades in child welfare, he says there is hope in this case.
What I've learned over my years in the field, change is possible. Recovery is possible. These kids and kids who experience things like these kids did, recovery, healing is possible. We've seen it time and time again, sometimes in the face of pretty overwhelming horror.
Recovery comes not just from the right caregivers and therapists, but also having an entire network in the community who supports these children.
Kids start to learn that if the world is going to be unsafe, and I need to sort of keep those fear systems alive in my brain and body, they just turn those systems on all the time. And part of what happens when they're removed from that situation where those systems have to be on is they struggle a little bit to figure out, wait a minute, do I need to have them on again or can I shut them off?
Oftentimes those children are labeled with behavior issues instead of the mental health issues they're facing. According to the Wisconsin Office of Children's Mental Health, 1 in 5 children are living with 2 or more adverse childhood experiences. Grove says experts now believe a third to half of the population of children are living with trauma following the pandemic.
We dream of a world where everybody in the community says, what can I specifically do? Maybe not to address what happened with these kids. They may never interact with them, but I promise you, there are many, many other kids with similar experiences and stories that they do interact with.
Grove says besides getting trauma-informed care training, the most simple step anyone can take is if you see a child acting out or acting differently in the community, look that child in the eyes and have a look of compassion and understanding. He says that simple step can begin to make a child feel safe.
They say the children were forced to live in a trailer. The parents were living inside the mobile home.
But the Parker County Sheriff says it's what was happening inside this Weatherford home that's truly disturbing.
It was just an awful situation.
Last month, 4 children were removed from this home and put in foster care. One child told authorities their stepfather, 20-year-old Colton Lackey, was sexually abusive and involved with child pornography. Their mother, 34-year-old Amanda Fuller, knew about the abuse but didn't act on it. Both parents are now in jail. Lackey for indecency with a child by sexual contact. Fuller for possession of a controlled substance.
Yesterday, we executed a search warrant.
These photos document the conditions the children were living in. Authorities say drugs, including meth and cocaine, were found.
It is the worst case of child neglect that Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd says he has ever seen.
I wanted to take a moment to stop the video to explain that there are other children who lived in this home where this child was found. Okay? All of these children would be children who experience an adverse childhood. These are the children who we really, really, really need to, as a community, put some focus on.
Deputies say a child just under 3 years old was found on the brink of death at his home on May 12th. He was covered in infections and his organs were severely damaged, and sadly, he did not survive.
And this child's name is not being released, but we do know that he had a short and unhappy life. He was already on a ventilator because of a previous incident, and as Sheriff Judd puts it, it seems his parents just got tired of taking care of him.
I have never seen the horror that we saw with this poor child.
It all began with a near drowning. 2 years ago, when the child was 10 months old, he fell into a pool and barely survived. His parents chose to keep him on a ventilator and stomach tube, with health aides helping to care for the child, who was in a permanent coma.
The child had no brain activity, could not even blink his eyes, cannot move his extremities.
In October, Sheriff Judd says they switched healthcare companies and began to stall on the new one. They ceased answering their door. On Friday, May 12th, Takesha Williams called 911 and said a piece of equipment wasn't working properly.
There appeared to be no life in the child. This child had an extremely extended stomach, and it was green. They just got tired of the baby. They just got tired of the intensive care this child needed. This child was rotting in the bed.
The child was rushed to the hospital but died. Sheriff Judd says the pair was afraid to call for help because she was worried DCF would take their other children away. The child was
That is a lot. That is a lot.
so infected that he was decomposing while he was still alive, with organs visible outside his body.
My prayer would be that the child was in a deep enough state that he wasn't aware of what was happening to him. But I don't know that.
Though Williams denied there was any neglect, she and the boy's father, Ephraim Allen, are charged with child neglect with great bodily harm.
Ultimately, our goal is to send these folks to prison for just as long as we can send them to prison. And then from there, God's got to take over.
You know, I feel like it's one thing to just hear about it, but it's another thing to really sit with it for a moment. Everyone who you are around may or may not have gone through something. The child that you look at and judge for behavioral issues and have no tolerance for, where did they grow up? What is their programming? Let's listen.
He's an intelligent child and a very attractive one. But Philippe is a problem. At school, at home, to himself. Philippe is an overly aggressive child. What can be done? We can say, oh, this is just a phase, he'll outgrow it. Or we can recognize that he needs help and that something can be done to help him.
Something needs to be done to help him. One thing I do want to mention before I continue forward is I wanted to ensure that I mentioned the fact that there are also other aspects of a child's environment that can undermine their sense of safety and stability and bonding, such as growing up in households with substance abuse problems, mental health problems, instability in the home due to divorce, the parents divorcing, parents not divorcing, but staying arguing, creating a toxic environment, single parent households where the parent is stressed financially and tired emotionally. And you also have parents who are incarcerated. Some children suffer from hunger, homelessness, unstable housing alone is enough. And discrimination. We can't forget discrimination. I want to introduce you to Beth Thomas. Take a listen.
But Beth's behavior in Tim and Julie's house was the catalyst to discovering what was really happening to John.
Do you have animals, Beth?
4 of them.
And what do you do to the animals, Beth?
Stick them with pins.
Do you stick them a little bit or a lot?
A lot.
What are you trying to do to the animals, Beth?
Kill them.
This is Beth Thompson. She was featured in a 1992 documentary called Child of Rage, which featured shocking footage of her telling her psychiatrist she wanted to kill her parents and brother in the dead of the night. In some footage, then age 6, she explained that her parents, Tim and Julie, lock her in her room at night to stop her from stabbing them to death. She also admitted to sexually abusing her younger brother, torturing the family dog, and killing a nest of baby birds. Jonathan also had to go to the hospital after Beth repeatedly smashed his head into a concrete floor in a bid to kill him. Beth and her brother Jonathan were adopted from a situation of severe neglect, and she was later diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder, which is also known as RAD. It's a rare but serious condition where young children fail to make healthy attachments with parents or caregivers due to extreme abuse. RAD is a common diagnosis of children who have been adopted when their new parents struggle to cope with violent outbursts aimed at them and family pets, destructive behavior, and self harm, all triggered from their traumatic early starts. It emerged that Beth had grown up neglected and had been sexually abused by her biological father until she was 19 months old. Her and Jonathan's mom had died when she was 1, and her brother was 7 months old. They were taken by child services. Beth saw a series of psychologists who struggled to help her develop empathy and overcome her psychopathic personality, which was the result of her father's sick behavior. Her adoptive parents were at their wits' end, so when therapist Kana Watkins offered to take her in her home to give her intensive behavioral modification therapy, they willingly agreed. Connell began by setting extreme restrictions on the young girl, making her ask permission for everything, and again, locking her in her room at night. Within a year, she was able to share a room with her biological daughter and had developed empathy. She stopped self harming and was remorseful for how she had treated her brother. You guys want to know where this young lady is today? Beth actually works as a nurse after studying for a degree, and she also authored a book called More Than a Thread of Hope with her second adoptive mother, Nancy. The company, Family by Design, help other families deal with RAD children and claims that Beth has grown up to be no longer a child of rage, but an award-winning registered nurse and an amazing speaker. Look what happens when you just start digging deeper and deeper into the internet. There she is. I'm going to make it bigger for you guys. I'm happy about the outcome of her story. And there are some wonderful, wonderful resources. The goal of the ACEs package or the ACEs plan by the CDC is really to try to get in the front of these situations before they go so long and or get out of hand, and also have the money to be able to manage these cases, because unfortunately you have people who have these experiences. They go get on drugs, they become unhealthy. I'm sitting here looking at this slide and I'm trying to think, like, how do I talk about this slide with you? This is our life. Address it today, prevent it tomorrow. We can reduce the generational impact of adverse childhood experiences, overdose, and suicide. Urge it in every community. ACEs, overdose, and suicide are critical and growing public health challenges. 5 of the 10 leading causes of death are associated with ACEs. They have a 35% higher suicide rate and a 6% increase in opioid overdose deaths. Are you yourself even lingering in the first category? Are you feeling suicidal? Are you pushing your body to the edge with drugs? Are you soaking your sorrows with alcohol? When did your drug use begin? When did your alcoholism begin? When did your aggressive bullying behavior begin? This is the root of a lot of our issues and concerns today. We need to get involved. Every child who we can help makes for a much more beautiful, lovely member of society. The next time you want to sit there and speak about kids and the kids of today, I'd ask you to first consider this conversation. So there's prevention. The experts got together and the CDC has put out things that we can do to help prevent adverse childhood experiences. ACEs, overdose, and suicide have generational impacts since preventing or addressing any of these issues. Okay? It decreases the risk of others, both now and the next generation. So this is literally saying to break that generational curse right there, ladies and gentlemen. To break the generational curse. How do you break it? Number one, we need change agents in the community. Change agents in the community. What do? They help with programs and they help align policies and they help build buildings that help strengthening the community. Increasing understanding of the shared root cause. It's not just one thing, there could be several things. So, if you truly understand the root cause, then you can help policies and programs align to digging up that root. And also ensure equity in policies, programs, and services, and invest in research. What works, what doesn't work, what's been making improvements, what's been helping things move along, and what is not so effective. This is where we are. This is where we are. I am talking about saving the children. What can you do as the neighbor or the teacher or the person who observes these possible situations of neglect or questionable situations of child grooming? Do you know a family that's struggling, that has children? And you might have even drawn a hard line with the parent. But what about the children? If you want to and you have time, make your way on over to the CDC's website, and or you could just Google adverse childhood experience prevention. What can be done to prevent ACEs? Creating and sustaining safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments for all children and families. This action can help prevent ACEs and help all children reach their full health and life potential. So, some ACEs strategies I just wanted to point out to you. ACEs strategies, they focus on changing norms and environments and behaviors in ways that can help prevent adverse childhood experiences from happening in the first place. The last strategy focuses on mitigating the immediate and long term physical, mental, and behavioral health consequences of ACEs. By addressing the conditions that give rise to ACEs and simultaneously addressing the needs of children and parents, these strategies take a multi-generational approach to prevent ACEs and ensure safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments. Together, these strategies are intended to work in combination and reinforce each other to prevent ACEs and to achieve synergistic impact. A multi generational approach. That means the great great grandmama, the grandmama, the mama, the paternal grandma, the maternal grandma, the dad, the cousins, the second cousins, the elders. It takes the entire community, the entire community. We can't, guys, we can't give up on the kids. We just can't. Sit with this. consider this. If there is just one thing that you can do to make a difference in one kid's life, I want to thank you for taking the time to hear me out today. Um, this topic is important to me, and I would like to continue the discussion. Um, it's just time. I don't know how it's going to happen. I'm here just doing what I'm supposed to do and what I'm led to do. And in that, it's just time. It's a topic that I'm extremely passionate about. I do when I go live, I want to talk about these things. I want to dig into the prevention plan more. I want to talk about more stories that are happening today, and let's take some responsibility by way of having the conversation, sparking ideas with each other, and if we can get just several children helped, it's what do we have to lose? What do we have to lose? My name is Beloved. You have listened to Beloved Oracle Speaks. I would ask you to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And I look forward to speaking with you again. Namaste, darlings.